So, hi guys, welcome back to this video. What I'm going over today is the cost of our Norway trip that we did back at the end of April, beginning of May. So I've managed to break down all the costs on my phone, and today I'm going to take you through it. So let's get on to the first thing. So, if you've watched the videos by now, you will know we went on a 3,600 mile trip up to Norway from the UK, driving through France, through Belgium, Germany, Denmark, Sweden, and then into Norway, round a bit of Norway, and all the way back down again. Now the costs I've got here don't include any souvenirs and things like that that aren't basic costs to go. Now by that I mean you could go to Norway and not buy any souvenirs, therefore I haven't included that in the price. I believe it's roughly about £400 extra we spent on souvenirs and gifts for ourselves. Like I bought some clothes, I bought some tea towels, and I bought some pots and pans for the car. So I haven't included that stuff in, as it's not a cost for Norway. So the costs I'm running through are fuel, camping, food and tolls, transport, i.e. the train over, and then I have done the activities we did for going out, which I'll include at the end. So we'll start with the most important, which is fuel. Obviously we did 3,600 miles, and most of these prices are to the nearest sort of £10-20. So fuel, in total we spent £976 on. Now that was for 3,600 miles in a fully loaded Land Rover Discovery 3, which I think is actually quite decent. It's not too bad. So I'll put the price of fuel up there on the list. And fuel wise, we found that the cheapest fuel was actually in Norway. It was about £1.20 in Norway, average price. When we come over to France, it wasn't much different to the UK at the time. At the time, the UK was about £1.38 for diesel, so it wasn't much different. I think it was a couple pence. When we started travelling more north towards Germany, the price of diesel I think was about €1.80. Petrol was extortionate. Petrol was like €2.40, near €2.50 at some places. Petrol's really expensive over there. So diesel was about €1.80 that is. And then as you got up into Denmark, it got even more expensive. Denmark was ridiculous. It was like cost me like £60 for just over a quarter of a tank. I would not recommend filling up in Denmark. If you're driving straight through, fill up at Germany, get into Sweden and fill up in Sweden, because it's so much cheaper. When we went on the way back down in Sweden, it was like 30p cheaper than just going over the border into Denmark, where it was obviously 30p more a litre, so it's quite expensive. But as we got up into Norway, we found the price of fuel went right down and was a lot better than the UK, so that helped us out quite a lot there, as we did fill up quite a few times. I think we ended up, most of the times it was topping off, so we were half a tank or a quarter of a tank filling back up. We filled up nearly like 12-15 times based on my list. So for fuel, it's actually quite cheap up there if you can avoid filling up in Denmark. Next we're going to look at campsites. Now if you've watched all the videos, you would have seen rough prices of the campsites on each video. Again, the campsites over there were really cheap. As you went further north, they seemed to get cheaper. We stayed at one in the Netherlands, which was the most expensive campsite, which was, I believe that was £23 when we went, but when we came back it was £27, because I got some tokens for the shower as well. The cheapest campsite we stayed at was the one in Denmark on the farm. That was at the end of episode 2, I believe, or the end of episode 1, beginning of episode 2. That was only £14 a night. and was actually quite a decent campsite. You got toilet, showers for that included. Nice secluded location. There was no one else there, which made it even better. But the total for campsites so we were there for 17 nights, was £278 for the camping. So when we stayed in Norway, we stayed for 3 nights at the same place, which took us to about £70 to £80 for that place, with showers included in that price. Lovely view of the river, really nice owners, really good facilities, and obviously the kitchenette with it. So that was the most expensive camping site. The most expensive site we stayed at was the cabin, which was £50 something a night. But like I say, the further you went up into Norway, the cheaper the average campsite was for what you were getting compared to the UK. It was a lot better. Like, I would pay for, in the UK, £20 for, say, a wild camping site where you get the bare minimum. Over there you got a kitchen, a living area, a really luxury campsite, for the equivalent over here to be not much. So the campsites were actually quite cheap. It was about, let's say it was an average about £21-22 per night across the board. Some of the campsites you had to pay for showers. Some of the campsites, the showers were also included in the price as well, so it differed between campsites. So I'll add the total of 278 to our totals list up here. So the next we will do is food. Now, food, the further you go north, the more expensive food shopping gets. Up in Norway, the shopping up there was ridiculously priced. It was so expensive. So they say about not taking meats across the border. We were never checked anything like that for meat. So if I was to do it again, I'd probably take, meats and stuff with us. I did take as much tinned and non-perishables from the UK as I could. So pasta, sauces, anything like that I took with me, so I didn't have to buy it out there because I knew it was going to be expensive. But when we got there, obviously we had to buy fresh stuff, which was a lot. You'll see in some of the videos, some of the little shops we did were like 50 quid, where over here you'll be looking at like £30 for the same thing. It was really expensive for shopping over there. So I would advise you to do as much of your shopping as you can in the UK first before you go over. Or if you're not going to eat fresh, do your whole shopping over here in the UK before you go over. But, I say it's your own risk as to if you want to take meats and fruit and stuff across the border. We were never checked. So, like I say, next time I'd probably buy it all here. The average price of the shopping was about £30 to £40, but we were buying different sizes of shop every day. And all the way up to Denmark, they have Lidl's. As you get out of Denmark, you've got no more Lidl's, so it becomes a shop called a Kiwi, or a Rema 1000, which is like the equivalent cheap shop, but they're still not comparable to Lidl prices over here. So I'd take that in mind, that you are going to be spending a lot of money on shopping. So total for the whole trip on food, now this does include eating out as well. So when we went up the Skylift, we had a nice dinner up there in the restaurant. We ate out a few times. So that's included in his food price, but the total we spent was £816 on food for the whole trip. That includes food I bought prior in the UK ready to take over there, so we'll add 816 to the list. But I will say, in Norwegian shops like the Rema 1000 and the Kiwis, their fresh produce availability was so much better than the UK. You could pick up every kind of vegetable individually wrapped, so you didn't have to buy a whole pack of peppers, you could buy one, and it was all super fresh, and it lasted a hell of a lot longer in the fridge than it would if it was UK produce. But the availability for like the Lidl's, they had whole sections of just fresh veg that are a lot bigger than they are in the UK. Also, in most of the Lidl's, a lot of stuff's in English on food packaging, but when you get into Norway and that, it starts to get quite hard to read packaging. So either learn a little bit of Norwegian, or Google Translate was my friend while I was over there. So next is the Eurotunnel. So we went from the I think it's Folkestone to Calais on the Eurotunnel. We went on Easter Friday, and that cost us £317 for a return. Now I believe it was cheaper to come back than it was to go because of bank holiday weekend. It was like 170 something pound for the way there, and it was a little bit cheaper when we got back. Now when you take the Eurotunnel, they advise you to get there an hour before your booking. Our booking was at 20 past 10 in the morning UK. We got there at about 8 o'clock because I did not want to be late for this, and we actually managed to get on an earlier train free of charge. So we got over to France. We were in France by 10 o'clock. And on the way back, we did exactly the same. We got there super early. They offered us a really, really early slot, which we would have paid extra for, or a slightly earlier slot, which we didn't have to pay. It was free. So we got an earlier slot and came back earlier than expected. Only by a few hours, but it's still a bonus. So I'll add 317 to the totals list. Now I believe you can also take a ferry to the Netherlands from England. But when I worked out the price for the ferry to how much time you were saving, it's not really worth it for us. But have a look at your options as well. There is more than just a train. Travel insurance is next. So obviously when you go abroad, you don't need travel insurance, but I'd highly recommend it. If something was to happen to you out there, you're covered. And you can also get a European health card as well, which helps with other slightly like urgent things, like if you have to go to hospital. But for 4 of us, so 2 adults and 2 children, it was £68 for the trip. So that was from the day before the trip to the day after the trip. So for 20 days of travel insurance cover, that was £68, and I believe it was with Admiral Insurance. Now one of the last things on my list for mandatory expenses, so things you have to buy that don't include the activity. So my mandatory expenses are food, camping, fuel, and tolls. So the last one is tolls. Now obviously, being in Europe, they're known for a lot of tolls. They have a lot more tolls than they do over in the UK. And we went with ePass 24, which is basically like an online toll payment system. So you put all your details in that, and then you just breeze through the tolls. When you get back, you get an invoice through the post that says, this is how much you owe us. If you put your credit card or debit card on your account online, they'll just take it. It's simple, nice and easy, and the tolls are actually a lot less than I expected. The total tolls for like tunnels and that and the ferry driving around Norway was only £45, and we did quite a few tunnels. And the other thing that surprised me was the ferry. The ferry was only like £4 to go about a half an hour ferry trip, which was actually quite decent price. You know, in the UK it'd be a hell of a lot more than that. Other tolls you're looking at, from Denmark to Sweden, there are 3 bridges. The first one is free, which takes you from Denmark to Denmark. There's another one which takes you from Denmark to Denmark as well, which is £25. And another one which takes you from Denmark to Sweden. That's £52 to cross. So keep that in mind. Again, I did look at the price of a ferry from Germany to the bottom of Sweden, but for the price you're looking at, it's a lot. It was like £290 one way, which is way too much because we were trying to do this on a budget. Or you can take one from the top of Denmark to the bottom of Norway. Again, the amount it cost for the amount you were missing and the money I would have spent on fuel, it was like 1 tank of fuel up, or like £200. So it's like double the cost, and it takes like 8 hours out your day, so you're losing that time. So we chose to drive, but totals for tolls was £208 for the entire trip. So we'll add that to the price list. Just remember, in Norway you will experience tolls. It's much easier to set up an electronic payment system before you go, like ePass. There's a few more out there, but we used ePass. It was nice and easy, nice and simple, and they took the payment automatically when we got back home. So the total for all the mandatories comes to £2,666. which is quite decent. If you compare that to the price of going over there, flying over and having a holiday over there, for the amount we've seen and all the little places we went to and the miles we covered, I believe that's quite a reasonable price actually. I think we did quite well. The only other things we added here are the activities we did. So the Skylift cost us £71 for a return trip for 2 adults and 2 kids, but I believe one of the kids was free because of their age. The other thing we did was the Moose Safari, which was £47 for 2 adults and 2 kids to go on an hour tour on a train, like a tractor train, around the Moose Safari place. So including the Moose Safari and the Skylift, the total comes to £2,803. So I think for the price we paid, plus the extra like £400 that I said we spent on souvenirs, but obviously you can go and just buy those souvenirs. But for the price we paid, I'm thinking that's quite a reasonable price. So if you were going for say 2 weeks, you'd probably be looking to spend around about £2,500 on, you know, everything, fuel, campsites, a lot. And with being in Norway, you can wild camp quite a lot, so that could bring your cost down quite a bit. Now, as for spending money and making that easy, we went with a Chase bank account, as they do an abroad card. So it's just like your normal UK card. You go abroad, you tap it, you put your PIN in, it comes out in whatever currency you are in, but it will automatically do the conversion into pounds for you and tell you what you spent in pounds, with no conversion fee either. It was free of charge to use. Everywhere pretty much in Norway and all the countries we visited took card. We didn't use any of our cash while we were over there, apart from on the last campsite because we had to use it up. So I would highly recommend looking at a foreign card. I think Monzo do one, I know Chase do one, also my Lloyd's credit card, that did the same thing. So I would look into a foreign card so you can make paying for things a lot easier. Some of the fuel stations over there are completely unmanned. It's just a pump with a pay machine. You pay, select your pump, fill up and drive off. It makes life so much easier and it's a really nice thing to do. All of the tolls in Norway are pretty much automatic. I don't think we stopped at a single toll. You'll know if a toll is coming up. There will be a sign, it's a little camera sign, and it will say toll. So you'll know there's something coming up. It also shows you how much the toll is, obviously in the country's currency, so you'll have to convert that for yourself. But most of the tolls were a couple quid each. They were really, really cheap compared to over here. So that's pretty much it. I've told you exactly what we've spent to a rough measurement, and I encourage you to go out and do this yourself. It's not a very expensive thing to go and do. You don't need a big fancy caravan, a big fancy setup. I have a second-hand tent, a second-hand car, a second-hand drawer setup that I built, and a cheap Halfords fridge. You can do this on the cheap. It doesn't require a lot of money to do things like this. So I highly encourage you to get out. And if you haven't already, go back, watch the Norway videos. I believe at the time of filming and when this goes up, I've got 2 more episodes to upload, but I'm going to upload this before. Go back, watch them through, look at the drone footage, look at the views, the places we went. All the locations are pinned for important places. The campsites are pinned. Read the descriptions for this campsite, the website and description. And I hope you can go on a trip like this and enjoy yourself just like we did. So thanks for watching the cost video, and I'll see you in the next one, guys. Goodbye.